Hi, I'm Susan Kennard and welcome to The Spiritual Awakener. This is a podcast where you're going to hear stories from people talking about their turning point in their life or their spiritual awakening that's led them to work with the collective, to work in service, and to really live their mission. So if you've got a spiritual awakening story, or you've got a story you want to share with my audience of your turning point and how you help others in this world, then please contact me at susankennard.co.uk. So here we are today with another one of my brilliant guests. I met this lovely lady at the New Media Summit in September 2019, and we've been in contact ever since. I feel very blessed that I've been on her podcast, which she'll tell you about, but I'm really happy now that we've managed to align our time zones, align our timelines, and to get together on my show. So Cynthia Clark, thank you so much for being here on my podcast. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's great to finally connect with you properly. We've tried to do it a couple of times and it hasn't happened with the timings. I'm in the UK, and Cynthia, tell everyone where you are.
I'm in Sedona, Arizona in the United States.
Yeah, Sedona, somewhere that's definitely on my bucket list, and I'm sure on lots of people's bucket lists. Tell us a little bit about Sedona. What's it like living there?
Well, if you're a spiritual person, you definitely want to put it on your list because it is in my opinion, the most beautiful place on earth.
Wow.
It is spectacular. And I've traveled all over the world, so I definitely have been to some amazingly beautiful places.
So you can confirm that. You can say, I've been all over the world, and yet I live in this place and it's stunning. Yeah.
Yes, I would definitely recommend a visit to Sedona.
Yeah.
If you're interested in just connecting to nature, connecting to yourself, getting to know yourself better, getting to know your soul spirit, that higher self side of you.
Yeah.
The views are just stunning. And we have quite lovely weather as well. So all the seasons are quite mild. So winter, we do get a little bit of snow, but not very much.
Yeah.
And in the summer, it gets hot, but it's not as hot as Phoenix.
Yeah.
Most people have heard of Phoenix, and that's very hot, or Las Vegas. You think of places like that.
Yeah.
Sedona's
LA, right?
Yeah. Sedona's not as hot as that. So we do get hot, but it's not unbearable. We're very dry. So, we do have, some rainy periods, but they're not,
they're not monsoons.
Yeah. Certainly not like other places.
Out in San Diego this last time, which I'm talking we're talking the 1st of April, 2020 here on this podcast, but I recently went out to San Diego again last month, and we had 2 or 3 days straight of monsoon. It was warm rain I've never experienced before, but it was quite unusual. I think everyone was saying, well, it's really unusual to have 2 days straight of rain. Is that the same in where you are in Sedona?
Yes, I would say that's true. Although we did have kind of a wet spring as well. So, we did have several days actually in a row with rain, and that was very unusual.
Yeah, I wonder if there was some sort of cleansing going on, because of what's happening in the universe at the moment and the climate.
Yeah.
I wonder if there was some sort of prep cleansing that was happening. Who knows?
I think it could be, yes.
Yeah.
Could be.
So, Cynthia, you're going to talk about obviously what you do a little bit later, but what do you feel was your spiritual awakening or your turning point in your life?
Well, that's interesting because I did have an awakening when I was 33 years old. So you can think of the magical number 33.
Yeah.
And if you're into numerology, of course, and also astrology, you think of your first Saturn return.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely right at that time.
About that time, isn't it? Is it between Saturn return between 27 and 33 or something? Some people it's
somewhere
earlier,
in there.
Isn't it?
Yeah, somewhere in there. So I actually had a pretty I would say, normal upbringing.
Yeah.
You know, with I'm the youngest of 4 kids, and I grew up in Utah. The only strange thing was I grew up Mormon, which
Oh,
some
yeah,
people
of
might
course.
consider that unusual, but it's
Yeah.
really not that weird.
Just
Um,
different. Just
yeah,
different,
yeah,
right?
just different, but very
Mm.
good morals, and really loving family and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
I got my business degree
Mm.
from the University of Utah. I owned my own restaurant for 7 years with my husband, and
Incredible.
yeah, we were working very, very hard.
Yeah.
And I would say I was starting to get opened up when I had my restaurant,
Yeah.
because I had my Qigong teacher show up at my restaurant.
Mm.
And she was from Switzerland, beautiful woman. And she just walked in my store one day and said, "I teach Qigong." And I was like, "What is that?" I had no idea. So she said, "Well, just take some classes and you'll find out."
Mm.
And I ended up training with her for 5 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And she opened the
That's a few
doorway.
classes.
Yeah, I would say a bunch of classes. But yeah, 5 years with her was amazing, because it opened the door to my own view of health and how the body works and how energy
Amazing.
works.
Yeah.
So it was totally opening the door to natural healing, natural ways of being. I got rid of all my allergies during that time. I used to be allergic
Wow.
to all sorts of things.
So this is
And
really good for people listening. So, I know our conversation is going to go in different places today, and I'm loving that already. And I've actually got a few things I want to ask you about the Mormon stuff, but I will do in a minute. But I just really want to say to people listening, neither of us, we're not doctors, are we? Like we're
no,
not doctors, and
no.
Cynthia and I are not doctors. So if you hear this and you feel like we are talking about cures, we're not talking about cures. But what we are talking about is that there are ways that you can shift your energy, and you can actually align. I mean, I know a little bit about Qigong, and really we're looking at the body and energy, aren't we? And people can do that by aligning their energy. And actually, sometimes these things that show up in our body, well, always these things that show up in our body are messages, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And so if we're aligning ourselves, so carry on. Yeah. Talk about Qigong.
Yeah. So Qigong is just a form of, you can call it Chinese energy healing. It opens up the meridians in your body, which are associated with different organs. And you do these different beautiful movements and breathing techniques. And it's sort of like the Chinese version of yoga.
Yeah.
So people can sort of get familiar with it.
Yeah.
And it really does work. I mean, it's been around in China for thousands of years, so there's a reason for that. Yeah. So you can do these movements, and you can align your intentions, because intentions always work as well. And I actually wasn't trying to cure anything.
No,
I was just doing the practice,
which is better in a way, isn't it? Because then you don't have kind of any expectations about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it didn't happen overnight, but it definitely was amazing. And I used to get hot flashes in my 20s, which is kind of, amazing.
Unusual.
Yeah, it's unusual. And my Qigong teacher, she was like, "Oh, your triple burner is, just out of balance." And she gave me some procedures to do, and I did them, and my hot flashes went away. So it was amazing. And we're talking no drugs.
Yes.
No supplements, it was all natural.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And that's the alignment, isn't it, of the body? When the body is in alignment with, well, we're going to talk about source, of course, but, our soul and our spirit, when our body's in alignment with that, then there's just this sense of wellness that happens. Right?
Yes, definitely. So that really kept me, I would say, balanced during the time where I was working very, very hard, because owning a restaurant, I was probably working close to 100 hours a week. It was insane. And that's just what you have to do.
Mm. Yeah.
It was just the way it was.
Yeah.
So that kept me healthy. It kept me, sane. It kept me happy. Eventually we did sell the restaurant and moved. This was outside of Zion National Park, another beautiful place.
Yeah.
And then we moved back to Salt Lake. And that's where I had my real awakening, which was going to the library one day. And I had no idea what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I had, it's like, I don't have my restaurant anymore. I'm not working incredible hours anymore. What do I do? But I've always loved to learn. And I love to, I constantly read and study.
Same. we're very similar like that. Yeah.
It's just like people say they get bored, and I'm like, how can you get bored? There's so much to learn.
And so much to learn. By the way, my astrology training starts this week, so watch out, right?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went to the library, and I ended up I was randomly walking up and down the aisles, and I stopped in front of the metaphysical section.
Yeah.
And I picked up a book on palmistry. Yeah. And I was like, I don't know anything about this, but it sounds kind of interesting.
Well, you thought you didn't.
Yeah, I thought I didn't until I started reading the book. And then I had this really profound deja vu experience.
Yeah.
And it was like, you have read this before, you have studied this before.
Yeah.
And I got a really strong intuitive message. I don't know if it was from my higher self or my angels or whoever it was from.
Yeah.
But the message was, you need to study this again.
Yeah.
And
remind yourself.
Yeah. So it's like, okay. Yeah. So I followed it, and I was fascinated by the book, and I started looking at people's hands, just my friends and family and things like that. And I would just test out some of the information on them. And I would be like, what do you think about this? And I had such a positive response. I was like, wow, how did you know that? How can you see that?
Yeah.
And I, tell me more.
Accurate. And
it was really a positive experience. And then I ended up going to my ex-husband's family reunion in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And I had the opportunity to read for the and he has a huge family. I think I read probably 100 people in 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I was reading the entire weekend. I wasn't even planning on this.
No, it just happened.
It just happened. They lined up, and I was like, okay. So I got my practice. And I got a ton of practice in a very short amount of time. And every single person went away with something really valuable.
Yeah.
And that was when I knew, it's like, you know what? This is your next profession.
Yeah.
So you better.
This is your calling.
Yeah.
When we talk about that with people listening, I always say that when it lights you up inside, when you know that when you are helping somebody with it, and it lights you up and you feel excited about it, then that's part of your mission. Don't you?
Yes,
I would
absolutely.
say. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And I was very humbled by the whole thing, because I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
I didn't know how people would respond to it. But I was also really excited. Yeah. And how some people get drained from doing stuff like that. Like, we're talking hours of reading.
Yeah.
I was energized. I was like, hey, this is great. Let me talk to the next person. Because
it's coming through you, right? Because it's coming through you. Yeah.
Exactly. And it was also part of my, I had started reading every single palmistry book I could find. So I was finding some discrepancies, and that was a little bit frustrating for me, because it's like, what does this line really mean? And so I started testing information, and I'm like, does this make sense to you? And it also had to make sense to me on my own hands. Yeah. So I started to sort through some of the bad information, and that took some time.
That's the same with any book, isn't it? When we read a book, or we read a course, or we do a course, we take from it what really resonates. And that's probably why you were meant to come back in this lifetime and kind of reinvent, and you're going to talk about that definitely in a minute, but reinvent the way that palmistry is perhaps used, because the science of it is amazing and the soul of it is amazing, but of course everything evolves, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you were using your intuition.
Yes, and it's just been such an amazing road. I'm very grateful that I get to be kind of paving the way for people to really understand the usefulness of it. And it's time for us to get over some of the old stigmas, the old paradigm, that
the old world, the old universe, the old earth,
all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because I mean, palmistry really does belong in this world as an incredibly useful tool for self-knowledge. And it's a mirror.
So say somebody's listening to this, because the Spiritual Awakener has many different people on it, right? And I haven't had a palmist yet, so it's brilliant. But so say someone's listening to this and they're like, oh, really? Can you really tell me what's in my hand? Surely they're just lines. Which ones? So say if people are listening, is there a particular line, that, maybe the heart line, maybe the love line, right, that people can look at now? So, and then you could sort of say to what to look for.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Which one do you think?
So I got to premise the lines though, because the lines.
Okay, you tell us.
The lines actually do change, first of all. Yeah. So a lot of people feel like it's a kind of a fatalistic type of a, divination. And it's really not, because the lines do ebb and flow like rivers of energy. And they reflect our free will, and they reflect how we respond to our thoughts and feelings in our environment. So, for example, if you have a challenging marker on your hand, it doesn't mean you're going to have it forever. And you can
it's kind of good to know
things
as well, right?
Yeah.
So what does so eagerly me, I know some of you are going to be watching this on video, and some of you are going to be listening to this on your podcast platform, but so I'm eagerly, and if you could see me on video, I'm excited as I get my hand out, So which hand would I get out?
Yes. So if you want to know about your heart line, okay, that's a major line in the hands.
That's what I thought might be fun.
Yes. The heart line actually does form 5 months before you're born. That's the same time that fingerprints form, by the way. Right. So every single person has a heart line on their hands, and the heart line reflects your emotional flow. Okay, so it's the line just below your fingers, okay? And it's going to be usually a fairly deep line, and it's going to start underneath your little finger, and it's going to run somewhere towards the middle part of your hand.
And which hand do we look at?
It's going to be on both hands. Okay, so
one of mine's really different though, Cynthia.
Yes, they can be different on the two hands.
I'm going to show it for the purpose of the thing. I don't know if she can see.
Yeah.
One of them's really different.
Yes. Okay, so this is how we read that. So your active hand is the hand that you write with. Okay, usually. And your passive hand is the hand that you don't write with.
Yeah.
Your active hand is going to show on this line the way that you interact emotionally with the public or with acquaintances, okay, professionally. On your passive hand, it's going to reflect more how do you interact with your children or your family, people you're very close to. Okay, so that's your emotion, because that's your emotional flow line. Okay, so yes, and some people are very similar on the two hands, and some people will be drastically different.
Mine's quite different. So at the end of mine, just for the purpose for people listening, I have sort of like a fork, like you would have a fork in the road, and that's on my non-writing hand, my passive hand. And on my other hand, I've got almost like a cross. So it's like a fork, but not a fork. It's a broken fork with a cross.
Okay.
Shall I show you, Cynthia?
Yes. Okay. Yes, you've got, we would call those the flirt lines. So
What does that mean? I know
in
what
your
flirt means.
case, you've got different emotional responses, like how you express your emotions based upon who you're working with or who you're talking to.
Oh, that's
So
true.
it's actually, I consider that a pretty positive marker because it shows that you can react in different ways to interact with people. Now, that big fork that you were talking about, you know, the one that's kind of going down, and I think it was going down towards your Mars mount. Yeah, so that's that's actually a partner preference marker. And that can show up. It's only on about maybe 10% of hands, but it's showing that you have a preference for the Martian type archetype, which is somebody who is
men are from Mars, right?
Yeah. So the Martian archetype is somebody who's very strong and courageous, confident, and they have your back. They're going to stand up for you. They're going to, you know, defend you, you know, that sort of thing. So that's that's a Mars person.
Wow.
And emotionally, it also means that you're seeking more of that in yourself. Wow. So again, it reflects that energy. So yeah, so if you just anyone listening who wants to like read their own heartline, you want to check just first of all, is it long or is it short? Okay, so that's our question number one. If it's long, it's going to end up underneath the index finger. And if it's short, it's going to end up underneath the middle finger. That actually shows how much do you allow yourself to feel. People with longer heart lines, they actually do feel more than people with shorter heart lines.
Wow.
Okay, so and one is not better or worse than another. Okay?
Just is what it is.
Yeah, there's no judgment on this at all.
Yeah.
And then you also want to look, does the second question to ask yourself is, does the line curve or is it straight? And again, of course, you, Susan, had all these exceptions because you had all these things going on. But if you just
that one goes down a tiny little bit. I don't know. This is my non-active hand.
Yeah. So if it's straight,
quite straight,
that's an indication that you're keeping your emotions more inward. Okay, more in like the thought realm. And if you're curving up to the finger, okay, so either your middle finger or your index finger, that's going to show an easier expression. Okay, so people with really curved heart lines, they tend to just blurt out what they're feeling.
So do you have a curved one? You're listening. Do you have a curved one, or do you have a straight one, or do you have a funny fork in the road like I have, which I'm really excited to find out a bit more about? So when the start of that fork, does that mean that when I am with my preference, because it's going up then? So when it's going up, does that mean that when I have found that person of preference, that goes up, or what does that mean?
No, your curve up is your expressiveness. So so you do have an expressive heart line, but you also have a partner preference. So
so if you've got a fork in your heart line, then you also have a preference.
And there's actually different ones. So not everybody has like the Mars preference like you do, but there could be a Jupiter preference or an Apollo preference. So
oh my God. So basically people have to get in contact with Cynthia for this, because I mean, she runs so many courses. I'm going to talk to her about her courses in a minute and talk to her about her service. But just for now, if people are listening right in this moment now and they're like, I want to know more about this, what's your website, Cynthia?
My website is loveinyourhands.com.
Yeah, loveinyourhands.com.
Right. And I've got a free 5-day challenge. It's called Align to Your Soulmate. And one of the days does take you through the heart line. So, I mean, you actually get 5 days where you can learn all kinds of amazing stuff about just your energy and things like that. So it's really fun.
Definitely sign up for that because it's free. Yeah.
Yes, it's free. Totally free.
Yeah.
And
So
I
carry on.
teach you. Yeah. So there's like a little video I take you through every day, and you can learn.
I've actually done it. I've actually
Yeah.
done it. I told you
Yeah.
I've done it. Yeah, it's
That's
really
fun.
good. It really is good. It's really good fun as well. And it's short. So you're not spending hours and hours on something. You're just going
No.
through the process, and it's really good. And it's video. So it's really good to
Exactly.
have video. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, but your hands have an amazing amount of information in them. And this is, there's other aspects also to your hands that are equally important. For example, your fingerprints, they form 5 months before you're even born. Like we were talking about the lines, that's when the lines form, but they don't change. So they are set with you for your entire life, and they're going to represent your soul's imprint and your
So
soul's
what does it
agenda.
mean? I've got to ask you this question because it's what I wanted to ask you next. So it's funny you're saying about fingerprints. When I went through San Diego and arrived in San Diego, my fingerprints would not work. And
What
they
do you mean?
got two machines out because they thought the machine had broken.
Okay.
And they could not, they looked at my hands and said, okay, and my fingerprints just would not show up on their system.
Okay. So yes, I'm not surprised actually with you.
Oh,
Because this is something that can happen. I mean, your fingerprints are definitely there. So we're talking about a machine trying to read something. Okay, so that's totally different.
yeah.
But there are levels of density. Okay, so for example, some people have very fine skin texture. Okay. And that means that their lines are going to be really delicate. It means that their fingerprints are also going to be very, sometimes they can be difficult to read unless you have like a very big, like I use a magnifying glass, or I blow it up on my computer if I'm reading it remotely, and I need a really high resolution photo sometimes for people like you who have just the thinner skin. And what that means is that you're more sensitive.
Yeah.
So people who are more sensitive tend to be in the realms of the psychic and, that intuitive realm. And they're just, they're more empathic. So if your skin is really soft and that's your natural skin, that's what that means. So people who have thicker skin, it's easier to read the fingerprints, they're not as sensitive as you are.
So it's funny how it used to, when I came over in September, it was fine in LA airport, but here coming another 6 months into my journey, my soul's expression, they weren't read. So would you say that was about the vibration, about what's going on in your vibration, in the lightness?
Yeah, it can definitely have to do with your sensitivity.
Wow.
Personally, I've never had a problem reading anybody's fingerprints. Like even people with really difficult to read, I can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the machine can't do it. My mom is the same way. She's quite sensitive, and like every time she goes to get her fingerprints read, the machines have a very difficult time.
Yeah.
Some people also, I will say, who work with a lot of chemicals can also have this problem. Wow. So like if you're constantly working with like washing your hands and chemicals and things like that, it can make it more difficult to read the fingerprints, but it doesn't mean they're not there.
The guy was like looking at me and he actually looked at my hands to see like, if I had normal hands.
Yeah. So it is, I think there's just a couple of instances where there's like a disease that can sort of take away your fingerprints for a while. I've even heard that chemotherapy sometimes can do it. But again, you're looking at all the chemicals going in your body.
In your system.
And that can kind of mess it up for a little while. But trust me, they grow back. And
because they're part of who you are, right?
Yes. I actually read a guy who he fell into a bonfire and both of his hands got terribly burned.
Wow.
And he showed me the pictures. This was like 3 or 4 months later. Wow. And he showed me the pictures of his hands. And they were raw and just really horrible looking. But guess what? I could read his fingerprints. His fingerprints still showed up, even with all those layers of skin being burned off.
Yeah.
And I was just amazed. It's like, wow, yeah, you can't get rid of these things.
It's the
That's
print of who you are. It's almost like the
exactly.
blueprint of who you are. Isn't
Exactly.
that amazing?
Yes.
Wow.
So when you understand that, your hands are trying to tell you your soul's agenda, and
Yeah.
they tell you how, like, your natural energy and what you have to offer the world,
Yeah.
and you don't have to work at it. You just have to be it.
Yes.
And it also shows your opportunities for growth. What
Yeah.
is your soul working on in order to grow and
Wow.
evolve? I mean, it's amazing. And you also have prints in your palm. And
Ooh.
sometimes people have special markers. There's about 20, I would say, that can show up. And that will definitely impact you in different ways. So
Mm.
understanding that is very important. And it
Mm.
plays in with the personality and the free
Yeah.
will. It shows up in your lines.
Mm.
And it also plays in with the other aspect of palm reading, which is the hand shape. So
Mm.
your
Oh, you
hand
talked to me about
shape.
that before. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So your hand shape is also very important because
Mm.
it forms by the time you're about 6 years old. So when you think about being a little child and you're
Wow.
coming into this world, you're coming in with your soul imprint already
Yeah.
there. You're
Mm-hmm.
coming in with your major lines already there.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you're kind of like a sponge.
Mm.
And you're just absorbing everything around you in that early stage environment.
Yeah.
And your hand shape will not set until you're about 6 or 7 years old. And when it
Wow.
does, that's going to impact you for the rest of your life. And we call that your personality archetype.
Mm.
And
That's
everybody
really
has,
interesting.
yeah, everybody has between 1 and 3 archetypes. And your archetypes will represent your subconscious influences. So from that
Mm.
early age. And when you're on purpose or you're happy or you're just naturally expressing yourself,
Yeah.
there are certain gifts that you will express. And you will also be able to identify compatibility. And
Mm.
that's really where I have steered my direction to help
Yeah.
people.
So let's talk a bit more about that, about, where you found your kind of, you do lots of other things. I mean, you can help people with their mission and everything else, but what
Yes.
your niche, I don't really like that word, but your
hmm
area of expertise right now is on the soulmate compatibility, isn't it? That aspect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because the hands reflect so much about like we just talked about, your preferences, your
Yeah.
partner preferences, but
Yeah.
also your soulmate compatibility.
Mm.
And this is something that I think most people just don't realize. And it is so valuable to know this because you can save so much time. I mean,
So I have
seriously.
so for the purpose of the, people listening, just listening and not seeing on the video, I have quite a long hand like this,
Yes,
don't I?
very watery. Yes,
A
looks like.
watery hand,
Uh-huh.
and they're both the same, similar, I would have thought. Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's a watery hand. So if you've got a kind of long fingers, and
Uh-huh.
what would
Long
you say
fingers and
that
a rectangular palm or a long
rectangular
palm.
palm and long fingers,
Mm-hmm.
what that's a water type hand, and what is
Yes.
compatible with a water type hand?
Well, you would be compatible with earth hands
And they
because
look like,
they look actually the exact opposite of you. So
ah,
they're going to be short fingers and a square palm. So, and
wow.
kind of thick as well,
Yeah.
because when you think about the elements, so it all ties in with the elements. So
Yeah.
water nourishes the earth.
Oh, this is really
Okay.
good. So water and earth go really well together. What else? So
Yes.
so for people, because people are
So
going to want to hear this, right? So if
yeah,
you've
for
got an
sure.
air
So
hand, what does it look
so
like?
if you're air, which would be long fingers and a square palm, you're going to be
Ah,
most compatible with fire because
ah,
air feeds the fire and they're very harmonious
yeah,
together. So, and you're always going to be compatible with your own hand shape too.
right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, we naturally gravitate towards people who are like us.
Mm.
And so you may have friends who have very similar hands to you, and that's great. They make
Amazing.
great friends,
Yeah.
but sometimes you may also want to have an opposite in your midst,
Yeah.
just to kind of get that, different perspective and things like that. So it's just so good to understand where that person is coming from.
Yeah.
But if you're looking for a soulmate partner, you want to find that really compatible, energy. So yeah, knowing your element, and it can help you also understand your tendencies, why you do
Yeah.
things the way you do, and also how to be healthier in general. So it's
Yeah.
super important to recognize that. And then
So,
to
so if you're
know,
dating, so say these people are listening now, and at the moment it's virtual dating because obviously we can't go out and see anyone at the moment. But
exactly.
even if you are virtual dating, so
Yes.
you could virtual date and ask that person secretly to put their hand up to the screen, couldn't you? And you could say, "Oh, I'm just really interested to see what your fingers look like."
Yes. Well, that's why I actually created the dating aspect on my website. So
Brilliant.
this took me a couple of years actually to get the
Yeah.
programming done and everything else. But yeah, so my Soulmate Connection membership, you can actually go in, you can upload a photo of your hand, and you can
Yeah.
find out your archetype. Okay, so it takes not only into account your element, your primary element, but also we look at the fingers, and then it'll tell you what your archetype is and who your soulmate match is. So the cool thing too about
Brilliant.
it is, okay, I realize that a lot of people are going to meet people elsewhere, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily in my dating site, although you could meet people there as well. But, just get a shot of their hand, like take a digital photo of their hand, and you can upload that into the membership. You can upload as many hands as you want. So you can
Oh, so even
actually,
if you're not meeting someone on your site, you've got
yes,
somebody that you're kind of interested in, but you're not sure
yes.
about, and you just get a picture of their hand. And
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. And you can upload as many hands as you want. You can do your friends, you can do your
yeah.
family. I mean, it's
Oh,
so much
wow.
fun.
Yeah,
So, and I recommend that because you're going to learn so much about them
yeah,
just from that little snapshot of their hand. And we're only looking at a very small piece of who you
that
are,
person. Yeah.
but it still is very useful information.
And it's great
So,
fun as well. I mean, you're very passionate about it. Obviously, as we, when we're on our mission, we're so passionate about our mission. But even
yes,
if somebody just wanted to have fun with it, they could just have fun with it. They could
yes,
see, and actually, they could even look at past relationships as well, couldn't they? They could say, "Oh, well,
yes.
I'm going to check out what that was about and why that didn't perhaps be why that wasn't compatible."
Absolutely. And
And
that's
did you do
yeah,
that with your ex? Did you look at that with your
yeah,
ex-husband?
I did. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's also why I do what I do now, because I went
yeah,
through my own soulmate journey.
yeah,
I was married for 19 years and I ended up getting divorced, and I was totally devastated.
yeah,
And my ex-husband and I were quite compatible, but we were the same element.
yeah,
So we were both fire hands, and that's
yeah,
why we worked so well together. That's why we
yeah,
ran the restaurant together, and we could handle 100 hours a week
yeah,
together. Which, I don't think I could have handled that with another type, probably. So it's kind
yeah.
of interesting looking back, like,
'Cause you got each other in that
yeah,
sense.
yeah, we
Yeah,
definitely did. But then when I got divorced, I was so devastated, and I was in a very low space
yeah.
emotionally. I got vertigo for like 9 months. I was just
Wow.
really sick.
Yeah,
And I ended up attracting what I call a fatal attraction,
yeah,
or you can think of it as the rebound relationship or the
yeah,
toxic relationship,
yeah.
and it was funny too, because I read his hands and I knew there were some like red flags, which is kind of funny.
But you still went for it.
I still like wanted to fix him, and it was like, why did I do that? But it was because of the space I was in, and also I feel like I went through that because I was learning a
Yeah,
lesson, a very, very valuable lesson that I can now share with others, and I can help
yeah,
them recognize when they're in a toxic relationship,
yeah,
and maybe they shouldn't stay in it so long. I stayed in
yeah,
on and off for 2 years.
Which
But
doesn't
then
sound very long, but it is a long time if it's toxic, right?
yeah, it was, and it was very painful
Yeah.
because I was very insecure, and
Yeah.
there were just all sorts of things
Been
going
there,
on.
done
Yeah.
it, worn the t-shirt, made the film. Made the
Exactly, right?
series of films. Yeah.
Yeah, but now
Yeah.
looking back, I'm actually quite grateful for that relationship
Yeah.
because I learned so much.
Yeah.
And unless you're actually in it, like, you don't really know what it's like.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's
And
more about when you come out of it, surely, isn't it?
yes,
So
yes,
when you come out of
absolutely.
it and you can look at it
Yes.
and go, oh my God, what was I
Yes.
doing for those years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you
Yeah.
get a whole new perspective.
Yeah.
And it opened the door for me to actually find my soulmate match. And now I'm happily married again, and
Yeah.
I'm just so thrilled. And I read his hands on our first date. And of course I did. What else am I going to do?
Yeah.
And
I
and
do
he
it differently. I read someone's energy. I'm like, okay, I'm scanning your energy. I'm clearing my past lives with you before I have my date.
right.
And you're reading the hands. Yeah, I love it. Brilliant.
Yeah, so we went to a lovely restaurant in
Yeah.
Aspen. That's where I used to live, and I met him there in Aspen. And I was like, huh, okay. The first thing I noticed was, hey, you're a storyteller. And, I'm like, that's interesting. So, don't believe everything he says.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
then the second thing was, I think we're pretty darn compatible. That
Yeah.
I noticed, his hand shape and everything was,
Yeah.
air, which, for my fire was perfect. And
Yeah.
it's like, wow, look at those long fingers.
But isn't
It
that
was,
fireworks?
yeah.
Air and fire.
Yeah, and it was just so funny.
Sparkling.
So I definitely recognized his
Yeah.
stuff. And it was beautiful. So, it was like, okay, well, let's get to know each other better and see what happens. And it still
Yeah.
took a lot of time. Like, it wasn't an overnight thing, certainly, because I was still getting over my, toxic,
Sure.
relationship, and
Yeah.
that takes time. But,
Yeah.
what I want people to know is that love exists, and love can exist for you.
Yeah.
You just
That's lovely.
you have to trust, and you have to take the risk. You have to be
Yeah.
courageous. And yes, you can get hurt, but love
Yeah.
is infinite, and it will always be there for you if you choose it. It can't not be there for you, but there are things that you have to do to be ready for it or to be able to receive it.
Yeah.
And that's also in the hands. The hands
Yeah.
show you whether or not you're good at receiving.
So if somebody is listening to this and they're thinking, oh my goodness, I came out of a marriage, I came out of, and I don't know if I'm ever going to meet anyone, then they could contact you and you book a session or whatever, they choose to do. And you could tell them, you could look and say, well, actually, you've got a bit of emotional healing to do here. You've got this to do.
Absolutely.
Actually,
Yeah.
when this is a different space, when this line is different and it's changed, then you're ready. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I actually can help people understand their entire emotional system.
Yeah.
So we just barely touched on it with the Heartline, but there's actually a whole bunch of things that we look at. So I look at all of the things that are important, and we can identify, what's going on specifically with you, and what are some steps that you can take to be proactive and start to change your energy. Because absolutely, it is possible for anyone. And I've worked with people even in their 70s who are like, okay, I'm ready for love again. It's like, great.
Wow.
That's amazing. I love that. And it's never too late.
It doesn't matter, does it, really? It's the same study. It's never too late, is it, to find your mission or find something that you feel lights you up?
Yes.
Oh my God, this is brilliant.
Yeah, never too late.
So your website is loveinyourhands.com.
Yes.
And you have a LinkedIn, I know you do. So is it your name or is it your business name, or would you prefer people to get you on your website?
Yeah, once they get in and start the challenge, I've got, all of my links will
Yeah.
come through the emails. I do a podcast as well, also called
Yay.
Love in Your Hands. Yeah, I'm in LinkedIn under, Cynthia Clark.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And also you have a book.
Yes, I do have a book. It's called Stories in Your Hands.
Ah.
So I published this book a couple of years ago. Actually, it came out in 2017. And it takes you through the archetypes. So if you want to learn kind of, okay, how do I read all of the archetypes? It'll take you through that. And it's a really good introduction to the archetypes. So, and they tie in with the tarot. So the subtitle is Discover Your Authentic Destiny Using Palmistry and Tarot. And so it's, there's 22 cards in the major arcana, and each one of those is an archetype, and that's how I connected it to the hands. So
that's an interesting read for anybody who's firstly interested in tarot as well, but is interested in the way that you work, the way that you've really tied it together in your own unique way, which I really like. And that's why you obviously needed to come back into this lifetime to teach us all really how it is.
Yes.
And perhaps not how it used to be, because there were a lot of restrictions on us being channels or mediums or whatever. There used to be a lot of restrictions, and of course now we don't have those restrictions, so we're free to explore our mission in a much deeper way, aren't we? And be more expressive about it.
Yes, we're finally safe to express ourselves.
Yes.
And that's actually my life lesson. It's kind of interesting. It shows up in my fingerprints. The reluctant, high profile person. So for most of my life, I've kind of been hiding out and keeping myself small and that sort of thing.
But I think that's what I'm feeling about that is from the times before, because obviously I do a lot of work on that stuff, and what I was sensing was that all those times you couldn't really be who you wanted to be in all those lifetimes and really speak about it from the rooftops or from the mountains, wherever you were. And yet now you can, having a book, a podcast, a business, serving people from all, I just want to say serving people from all over the world. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can work with Cynthia. So it is, we're coming to the end of our chat. Is there anything that you really want to, kind of a last word that you want to say to people that are interested in all of this?
Yes, I want to tell people that your desires and your intentions really do matter. And, sometimes people, they can get really discouraged, especially it seems like, there's a lot of fear in the world right now. And it's, don't buy into the fear, focus on, what is possible for you, because as an individual, you have a lot more power than you realize. And if you're, seeking a partner, that is something that is totally possible for you. And, the first step is just the desire, right? We have to desire something. But there are tools, and that's where I come in, and I would love to help you with that. But, just know that just setting your intention is like step one, and focus on what you want, not what you don't want. It's very important.
That's really important for the laws of the universe, isn't it? It's to really focus on what you get excited about, and focus about, if you really want to have a relationship, then don't be thinking, I haven't had a relationship for 100 years, how am I ever going to get one? Think, oh, how wonderful it would feel if I had that person in my life.
Exactly. And you can also ask the question, what would love do?
Yeah, good one. What would love do?
Yeah, what would love do?
Mm.
Because love is infinite and expansive.
Mm.
And it's not fear based, it's not restrictive, it's nothing like that. So if you just ask that question when you're struggling or you're, having, whatever is coming up in your life, just say, well, what would love do?
And what I'm getting is a little vision here when you said that. It's almost like a little tiny little person, maybe with little wings on it, and you've got your little person, your little character, and it's like, well, what would you do? And sort of
Mm-hmm.
giving them a character. So love a character, maybe a symbol,
Yes,
in
for
your
sure.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely people are so hard on themselves a lot of
Mm.
times. We can be our own worst enemies.
Yeah.
Just love yourself and know that whatever has happened to you in your past is okay.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up over it.
It's just a
You know,
story, right?
right. It's just, it needed to happen that way for a reason. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
So, the best thing you can do is just, what would love do?
I love that. And to end it on what would love do. That's amazing. So people can go away with that pure, what would love do? Well, thank you so much, Cynthia, for being here on my podcast, The Spiritual Awakener. I've had so much fun. You can find Cynthia on lovingyourhands.com. And if you've got a spiritual awakening story, if you've got something you want to share with me, I would love to hear your story, your turning point, your spiritual awakening, and how you help the collective. Thank you for joining me on The Spiritual Awakener. And if you want to hear my story of how I spiritually awakened and how I help you, the collective, please go to episode 1. Much love for now.